Here is something I keep seeing, and it doesn't get talked about enough. A company buys into AI. They move fast. They deploy tools, connect APIs, and build automations. 6 months later, they have more capability than ever, and somehow, the organization feels harder to manage than before. More outputs, more noise, more things running in parallel that nobody fully owns. That's not a technology failure, that's a structural failure. And if you're not watching for it, AI will make it invisible until it's a real problem. I want to talk about what's actually happening inside companies that are scaling AI right now, and why so many of them are discovering that the tools were the easy part. By the way, what you're looking at is an AI clone. This is intentional, because AI is part of how we work every day at Data Wonder. We build AI automation and voice agent systems for real businesses, insurance companies, accounting firms, and medical clinics. Businesses where the cost of getting it wrong is concrete. That experience shapes everything I cover on this channel. If you want business-focused AI analysis that skips the hype, the subscribe button is right there. No pressure, but this channel is built for people who run things or build things and want to understand what's actually happening. So, back to the problem. Most companies that start deploying AI do it the same way. They identify a pain point, usually something obvious: high volume of inbound calls, manual data entry, repetitive document processing. They automate it. It works. The time savings are real. And then they do it again, and again, and a year later, they have 12 automated workflows, 3 voice agents, 2 different AI tools that do overlapping things, and nobody has a clear picture of how it all fits together. Does this sound familiar? Because I've seen this in almost every company past a certain adoption stage. The assumption, and this is the assumption I want to challenge, is that more AI equals more scale. That if you keep adding capability, the organization keeps growing its capacity. That scale is a natural output of good tooling. It isn't. Scale is a structural property. It's the ability of an organization to grow output without proportionally growing complexity. AI can support that. AI can also destroy it if you deploy without the structure to absorb what you're building. Here's where it starts to break down. And I want to be specific, because this is where most of the analysis I see gets too vague. When a company automates a workflow, they remove a human from a repetitive task. Good. But that human wasn't just doing the task. They were also carrying context. They knew when something felt off. They knew when an exception was about to happen before it happened. They knew the history. When you automate the task, you often automate away the context carrier. And now you have a process that runs perfectly in normal conditions and has no one equipped to catch it when something outside normal conditions occurs. That's the first fracture point. And most companies don't see it until the exception happens. But that's not even the deeper issue. I'll get to that in a moment. There's a second thing that happens, and it's subtler. When AI output starts flowing through an organization, reports, summaries, flagged items, automated communications, people adjust to it. They start trusting the output without maintaining the judgment to evaluate it. I'm not being dramatic. This is documented organizational behavior. When a system consistently produces accurate output, humans recalibrate. They move from verification to assumption. That's efficient until it isn't. And the organizations that catch this early are not the ones with better AI. They're the ones with better ownership structures, clear accountability, someone whose job it is not to run the AI, but to watch how the AI changes the humans around it. That's a role most companies don't have, and it's the gap that usually explains the difference between AI deployment that scales and AI deployment that stagnates. If you're finding any of this useful, a quick like helps other people find this content. Just one click. Now, let's go deeper. Because here's what I actually want you to take away from this video. Companies talk about AI scale in terms of volume. How many calls are handled? How many documents are processed? How many tasks automated? And those are real metrics. But the actual bottleneck to scale in almost every company I've worked with is not output volume. It's decision quality at speed. Let me explain what I mean. When AI handles the repetitive layer, it compresses the time between inputs and outputs. A process that took 3 days now takes 3 hours. That sounds like a win, and it is on the surface. But the decision-making layer hasn't changed at the same rate. The humans responsible for reviewing outputs, making calls on edge cases, and escalating exceptions, they're still operating on the same cognitive bandwidth they had before. Sometimes less, because the AI is now generating more things that require their attention, not fewer. This is the second-order effect, and this is what most companies don't see coming. AI accelerates the production layer. It doesn't automatically accelerate the judgment layer. And if you don't restructure around that gap, if you don't redesign who makes which decisions, with what information, at what speed, then what you've built is not a scaling system. It's a system that creates pressure faster than it creates capacity. And that pressure lands somewhere, usually on the people who were supposed to benefit from the automation in the first place. Here's the version I see play out in practice. An accounting firm automates their client intake and document collection. What used to take 2 weeks now takes 2 days. The team is thrilled. But now, clients expect faster turnaround on everything, not just intake. The automation raised expectations without raising capacity in the review and advisory layer. So the senior accountants, who were supposed to benefit from the time savings, are now under more pressure, not less, because the pipeline is moving faster, and their judgment is the bottleneck. The fix is not better AI. The fix is restructuring the advisory layer, redefining turnaround expectations, adding clearer triage logic between automated outputs and human review. That's an organizational design problem. AI had almost nothing to do with the solution. This is what I mean when I say AI doesn't create scale. Structure does. AI creates raw capacity. Structure determines whether that capacity translates into scale or into chaos. The companies that figure this out are the ones who treat AI deployment as an organizational design project, not a technology project. They ask different questions before they buy anything, not just what can this automate, but who owns the output and what changes in the human layer when this process is automated, and what happens when this system encounters something it wasn't trained for. Those questions are unglamorous. They don't make good demo videos, but they are the difference between an AI rollout that compounds value over time and one that creates 6 months of productivity gains followed by organizational confusion. Have you seen this in your own company or in companies you know? I'd genuinely be curious. Leave a comment below, not to debate the tools, but to talk about the structural side of this. That's the conversation that actually moves things forward. The takeaway here is not that AI is overhyped. It isn't. The productivity gains are real. The cost savings are real. The freed up capacity is real. The takeaway is that those gains only compound when the organization is designed to absorb them, when accountability is clear, when the judgment layer is protected and properly resourced, when someone is explicitly responsible for watching how the system affects the people running it. That's the work. And it's less exciting than buying a new tool, but it's the work that determines whether any of this actually sticks. If what I described today sounds like what's happening in your company, the capacity gains that somehow didn't translate into scale, the pressure landing in the wrong places, the AI rollout that created as many problems as it solved, and you want to think through what the structural fix actually looks like, you can book a free call with me. The link is right below this video.